Months passed and final trials arrived. Every cadet was to face the simulated battlefield, under real gravity pressure and combat conditions. Ethan entered the arena with his arm still bearing the faint scar of his first duel. The simulation began with explosions and chaos, the air filled with smoke and heat. Aliens shouted orders, energy fire rained down, but Ethan moved through it all like a force of will, his body bruised, his breath ragged, but his focus sharp. When a blast threw Lena across the field, he ran through the flames, lifted her and carried her to cover, ignoring burns on his hands. Instructors watched through screens, their disbelief turning to awe. By the end of the trial, Ethan stood bloodied, surrounded by fallen drones and exhausted teammates. When the simulation ended, silence filled the hall. Even Draven the Trulak bowed his head to the human. Later that night, as the stars rose above the academy, Ethan sat on the roof, watching the twin moons. Lina joined him and said that maybe humans were not weak after all. Ethan smiled and said maybe they just never learned when to quit. From that day on, every student of Korynn Academy carried a new motto, one born from the stubborn courage of a single human from a small blue world, just a scratch. By the next morning, stories of the duel spread across the entire academy. The human who would not fall, the human who bled and laughed, had become a legend among students. Many came to see if the story was true, expecting to find Ethan in the infirmary, but instead they found him in the yard, doing push-ups, one arm wrapped in bandages. When questioned, he only said he needed to stay ready for the next drill. The alien instructors observed from a distance, whispering among themselves about human resilience. No being of their records recovered that fast from a strike like Draven's, yet this human did not even rest. During strategy class, Ethan sat beside a Zorathi student named Lena, who had 4 eyes and a sharp mind. She asked why humans endured so much pain without medical pods. Ethan replied simply that pain was not the enemy, giving up was. The phrase stuck in her mind like a spark. When the next set of trials began, Ethan faced a new challenge. The endurance field, where gravity increased every minute. Most aliens dropped after 10 rounds. Ethan lasted 30 before he collapsed, breathing, hard sweat pouring from his face, but when instructors tried to lift him, he waved them away and crawled to his feet again. The crowd watched in disbelief. Each second he stood was proof that the human body, though frail, was powered by something deeper than flesh. Word spread beyond the academy walls. Even the Elder Council heard of the Terran cadet who refused to yield. Some mocked him, others feared him. But for the young aliens of Korynn Academy, something inside them shifted. They began to train harder. They began to push through pain. They began to say the same words. Whenever things grew hard, just a scratch. The twin suns of Korynn burned high above the academy grounds, where cadets from a dozen alien worlds trained to become defenders of the stars. In the center courtyard stood Ethan Cole, the only human among them. His uniform frayed his boots, scratched, his eyes filled with quiet fire. The alien students watched him with curiosity and a touch of disdain, for humans were new to the galactic order, a primitive race barely learning how to cross the void. Yet Ethan never flinched. He arrived early, stayed late, and when the drills grew harsh, he only smiled and kept moving. On the 5th day came the combat trials, where strength and endurance would be tested under the eyes of the instructors. The students were paired by draw, and fate was cruel to Ethan, for his opponent was a Trulak warrior named Draven, whose claws could slice stone and whose height dwarfed even the tallest alien. The crowd murmured when Ethan stepped forward, holding only a practice stave, his human muscles tense, his breath calm. When the duel began, Drav moved like a storm, his first strike sending sparks across the training field. His second blow hit Ethan square in the side, sending him crashing into the wall. A gasp spread across the courtyard when red liquid began to drip from the human's arm and side. Instructors rushed forward shouting orders, but Ethan raised his hand and shook his head. He looked at the wound, his voice steady and dry, and said, "Just a scratch." The aliens froze, unsure if he was serious. His skin was torn and his arm trembled, but the human tied a strip of his uniform around the cut and stood tall again. He raised his stave and motioned to Draven to continue the fight. The courtyard grew silent, the suns glinting off blood and steel. Draven hesitated, not from pity, but from disbelief. The human should have been on the ground, yet there he stood ready to fight again. For the first time, the alien students saw not a fragile creature, but something else. Something unyielding, something terrifyingly determined.